So, welcome everybody. Thank you for this evening. My name's Daniel Meeker. I'm the president of the Swiss Finance and Technology Association, and I would like to welcome you tonight here for our fourth online networking event. This time we're going to be talking, and the focus will be on Voicebot for banking and how artificial intelligence can improve the customer experience, which I'm really interested to hear more about during this panel discussion. The Swiss Finance and Technology Association is an independent association representing all stakeholders neutrally, and we act as a center of gravity to foster the development of the Swiss fintech ecosystem. One of the main activities we do to do that is to bring together the key stakeholders of the Swiss and global finance and technology community, with tonight being a great example. We have a chapter model in the association with 3 chapters. So that's Zurich, the western part of Switzerland, and the latest chapter is Basel. Other important aspects to our association include social media and marketing promotion for our fintech members, advocacy, research, mentoring, and lots more. As you know, tonight's event is free to attend and is open to non-members. However, it is possible to join as an official individual member, and that's something I would strongly recommend, because that was the beginning of my journey with the association, and I can tell you a few things that you would benefit from by becoming an official member. So with tonight being a great example again, you will meet a lot of new and fascinating people who work in some really great areas of the fintech industry. You will have the opportunity to attend informative and fun events, learn new things and gain insights to the latest topics in the fintech industry, get involved in committees, you could share your insights, you could even become a mentor to others. There's really a huge amount of possibilities within this association, and we're open to suggestions as well. And in that respect, I sincerely look forward to welcoming some of you as members this year. Finally, I would like to say thank you to Gabriel Lamont. He's our Western chapter head who organized this event tonight, and especially the panelists who are going to give us their insights on this topic. And now I will hand over to Gabriel, who will be moderating the event.
Thank you, Daniel. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here tonight. As it has been mentioned by Daniel Meeker, I'm the head of the Western chapter. I'm also contributing to most of this online event. And I'm happy to have organized this event tonight, which is on the topic of Voicebot for banking. Now, our main speaker, I would say, will be Stefan Fellmann for speech, which will present this keynote tonight. And after the keynote, we will have panel discussions with Dominique Spalinger from Post Finance and Jérôme Bailly from Ad Novum. Feel free also to drop some question in the chat, so in the Q&A function, so that we can share them later with the panelists. And now I will hand over to Stefan Fellmann, and I'm happy to meet you again after the keynote for the panel discussions.
Good evening, everyone. Also from my side, I'm very happy to be here today and give you a few insights into the interesting topic of voicebots in banking. And I would also like to thank you, the Association of Swiss Finance and Technology, that giving the opportunity to be here and speak to you. And I'm going to share my presentation with you, and I hope you're going to see it, and that technology is on our favor today. Right, so I assume that you are seeing it. Otherwise, I kindly ask Gabriel to interfere and let me know.
We can see.
So, voice banking, a very interesting topic, and I think it's really the time to jump on this train for these kinds of solutions. As Gabriel already introduced, I'm Stefan Fellman. I'm from Spitch. We are a Zurich-based startup company, and I'm also happy to share a panel discussion later on with my colleague Jérôme from Adnovum, who usually do project integration together with us. So what are the challenges that banking actually are facing? It's not only about the banking task per se, but it's actually also about the customer interaction. You may think, okay, it's not very difficult to just pick up phones and consult customers, but actually it's very easy and can be very cumbersome. And sometimes you have good clients and happy clients, and sometimes you have clients that are not so happy when they're calling in. So therefore, you have quite some challenges that you're facing. And then when we combine that together with technology that is very fast moving, you have to be at the top of the wave, right? In order to right at the front and also gain a competitive advantage. So basically, it's very important that you look at the customer service from internally to the outside and from the outside to the inside, so that also your employee, your bank advisor in the service center, that they are very customer driven, right? That they know what the problems might be a customer facing, so that they are treating every and each customer uniquely and independently. That obviously makes sure that the customers get innovative applications that they are facing. So it's not only in the call center, but we know it with mobile banking, for instance, with the online banking, etc. So there are many different areas that you make sure that you have a very innovative customer interface that makes you as a bank attractive and to be chosen by your end clients. Then on the other hand, it's also very important that these different customer touch points are integrated very smoothly, so that you do not have channel breaks, or if you have a channel break, that it's not really realized by the customer in a cumbersome way, that the conversation has to be picked up where it was left by the chat, for instance, or by an email. So it's very important that these processes are interlinked, and therefore it's very crucial that you make sure that the backends are connected. That doesn't matter on which channel that the customer is coming in and seeking the service, that you provide equal quality and that the response are always the same. Doesn't matter on which channel the customer is interacting with the bank. Of course, besides all the benefits that it should be there for the end clients, there also needs to be a revenue growth at the end of the day in order to make it interesting from the banking perspective. And therefore, these kind of solutions, one of them is voice banking, makes it very attractive to introduce a process that gives the bank the opportunity to have a growth, while at the same time also increase customer satisfaction. And then, of course, when we combine all these together, you also need to guarantee this data security. Nowadays, it's a big topic when we talk about technology and the technology advances. Basically, what happens with the data, who is the owner of the data, and what can be done with the data. And this is very important, that you give to the customer the feeling that the data, his own data, is secure with the bank and is not being treated badly or given away to another enterprise or even transferred abroad. These are just a small overview of customer-facing challenges from the internal point of view as well as from the external point of view. So if we look at voice banking, I mean, as the name is already naming it, it's voice, the topic of voice, right? How do you interact with your bank? So when we think about it, the first question that usually pops up, okay, how do we actually authenticate our customers, right? So that means that you need to have a technology in place that is able to authenticate the customer. So when we talk in the area of voice, how can it be done most easily without having a channel break? Of course, it can be done by voice biometrics, right? So basically identifying the customer by his or her voice. And then another one is actually analyzing the entire speech. So this can mean that it's a background support for the agent or the bank advisor, so that it has a real-time support in the background. So the customer does not really notice anything, that there is a machine helping and supporting the customer's advisor. However, the customer perceives the advisor much more competent because he knows regulations that are maybe not so common but are popping up because the machine is helping. And then we also have the fully automated process, meaning that the customer actually speaks to a machine and just gets the same information as the customer would be given by a human being on the other end, by a bank advisor. And that's basically where we're going to focus today. Benoit Lecomte, the Chief Innovation Officer at ING, recently said that you want to get all the hassle away, so banking is becoming invisible. Well, I mean, if you think about what could he have meant by that? I mean, when we look at the trend nowadays, when you look at the streets, how many people are speaking on the phone? We are not chatting anymore. We are sending each other voice messages. We have smartwatches on our wrist, and I mean, this item is quite tiny, right? So you cannot really type. So how do you interact? Well, it's easy. It's by voice, right? What is the problem though with the smartwatches is that the data that is being you put in there. So if you speak to your smartwatch and you use the voice recognition system of your device, everything is being processed in the US, right? So that's not very appropriate as a bank if all the customer data is being processed in the US. So that's why you need to have an in-house solution that actually only works for you and is being covered in an own bubble. If we look at the US, where I found a representative study from users that were asked whether they would use voice banking, or more precisely, whether they perceive it as being beneficial. If you look at the trend over the last 3 years, we can see quite a distinct increase of the satisfaction of people being aware of the fact that it can help and also understand the benefit out of it. Of course, to name only a few, of course, you got a 24/7 service out of it, because you are suddenly reachable by your client all the time you want, and you can cover all the languages that you want. There's no waiting time at all for the client. I mean, if I only want to know my bank account balance, for instance, why should I be interested in staying in the waiting line? Or if I just want to get a document, why should I be staying in the waiting line, right? You get a constant quality, so you don't have a moody agent on the other side, and you're very compliant, because as you're talking to a machine, right, there is no human being that basically interferes. Many of you may know the feeling when you're talking to an authority, to a bank or some other offices, and then they ask you very personal information. So you might feel very uncomfortable sharing it with them, right? However, if you're sharing it with a machine, you're much more comfortable sharing it, because you know nobody's going to read or listen to it, and nobody can copy it and abuse the information, right? And the matter of fact that everything is being stored and tracked automatically, make sure that you are always acting compliant. So, but how does voice banking actually work? If you look at today from the service center perspective, how it works there, right? So on the left-hand side, we got the nice, beautiful bold client, and then we got the agent at the bottom. So you're gonna call your bank, and then usually you're welcomed by a machine already, and then asking you to press any keystroke. So basically, press 1 if you want to block your card, press 2 if you want to know your account balance, press 3 if you want to know the opening hours, and so on, right? You know it. Annoying for everyone, nobody likes it, but yet you still have to press it. So you press the number that you like, and then you are being transferred to the agent. So if you were patient and you listen to all the possibilities, you may end up being at the right agent. If you were not patient at all, then you pressed 1, and then you might have gotten to the wrong agent who has to forward you. And then the conversation is just naturally happening between two human beings, and the agent, of course, some information he or she knows, and others needs to be looked up in the database manually. So how can actually voice banking support this this path, right? So if you look at it, the same situation, we have the customer and we got the advisor. I call the bank, and as I mentioned before, you were already welcomed by a machine, so same stays. But now, actually, the machine only welcomes you at the bank and asks you, how may I help you? So, whoa, that's a completely different scenario, right? So you don't have to listen to all the possibilities that you get, and you might not find the option that you actually want to select, or you're just not a banking expert and you don't know in which topic area your problem belongs to. However, if you're just welcome, how may I help you, and you can phrase your problem, your concern in your natural speech, you will find the right wording, and the machine can just do the same thing. It could forward you to the agent if it wants to, and then everything stays as it was before. So it's just a human-human interaction. However, what about if we have some simple requests? So if we zoom in a little bit on our little friend here, so after telling the robot what you actually want to have, then you can say, okay, I got an invoice and I'm not very happy with the invoice because this and that. Sounds quite complicated, right? Okay, so you probably will be talking to an agent right afterwards. However, if you're not calling the bank and you just want to know your account balance, who wants to answer the account balance all day long? Probably nobody. Is it a benefit for the client, for the customer to stay in waiting line just to get the account balance? Probably not. So why can it not just be the robot? Because what does he do? He has the same source of information, the same backend system that it just connects to, and is able to give exactly the same information back to the user, right? And now when you think about, if you have this scenario, we were talking about the service line, the telephone system, right? But everything that this little guy can do here in the service center can also be actually done through an application, for instance, right? If you just seek a service through your application or your e-banking, it's just the same robot at the background, and he or it learns every day by doing, basically, and gets better and better and can serve at several channels. And as we've seen before, one of the challenges is to serve equal quality on all different channels. So there you go. You have one little tiny guy that is able to help you whichever voice input that you're addressing. How does that actually look like in the background? Well, quite tough, right? Quite a lot to digest, quite a big picture, and not so very fancy. If you zoom in a little bit, we see different branches, right? And that's how it used to work in the past when you have ever touched such a system. Usually, you are asked a question, you give an answer, you are being asked the next question, you give an answer, and so on, right? However, what today's technology can actually do is that you as a user, you should be guiding the dialogue, right? You don't want the machine to tell you what to say. You actually want to be able to lead the dialogue and tell the machine what to do next, right? And that's how it works today. Whatever you say, the machine understands what you're saying and jumps to the right point in the entire branches to find the right answer. And then the very good thing is, if you reach the end, or you can make several questions, and if you got a question now that just popped up because you're already talking to the bank and you realize, oh my God, you have another question that is more difficult, and the robot cannot handle it, very easy. It just transfers you directly to an agent, and the agent sees already what you've been doing so far and can just follow up on what you've been doing and reply to this more difficult and cumbersome question. From a banking perspective, so now you may ask, where can I actually use it? It's important that we differentiate between where do we need an authentication and where do we not need an authentication, because actually you can also use this technology for non-existing client, but they might get attracted to it, right? So as I said, the little guy just needs to understand the intent. Once the intent is known, the entire world is open. if you start with use cases that you don't need an authentication for, right? So if you just want to know opening hours of a bank branch, for instance, right? Or if you want to have standard fees, if you compare banknotes from one bank to another one, right? It just says the same. It's the same information for everyone. You don't need an authentication. Very easy. You can do it 24/7. When you're in the at night comparing banks, where should you open up your next bank account? Very easy. Just simply call. You have the answer in a few seconds, maybe a minute. However, when you're scrolling through the internet, you probably waste much more time. And then the second thing is the very personalized, being an existing customer, right? So there, of course, you need the authentication, which can be done, as I said, through voice biometrics, probably the most or the easiest way to do. You can also think of other ways such as push, for instance, or SMS or the banking application. But of course, keep in mind, you every time have a channel cut, right? So you switch channels, so it's much more comfortable if you can use the voice banking, the voice biometrics, I'm sorry. And then here you also have some individual cases, right? So for instance, if you just lost your card and you're going to call your bank, and there are only 2 banks in Switzerland that serve 24 or have a 24-hour hotline. So the other ones you have to wait for the next day in order to block your card, right? Well, what if you were just out in a restaurant and on your way home you lost it? Then you will be very happy that you can block it immediately, right? Or if the end of the year approaches and for the cumbersome tax declaration you need some documents, right? Why not just simply ordering it, calling the hotline and telling them that you need this bank statement, and then you just get it and everything done, right? Pretty cool. And especially because you don't do your tax declaration during working hours. You usually do it at night or on the weekend. So that's when your bank is not reachable. But like with that, you can do whatever you want. If you look at some key attributes with voice banking, voice recognition in general, so Gartner basically said that it's very important that you respect and consider the localization, customization of speech recognition engines. And that's because you should have a model that is not fixed the way it comes. So it's very important that you can train the model additionally with your own customer data for your own banking vocabulary, and also feed it with additional material, with additional data in order to make it better and better and better every day. And then also the metadata that is found in speech is very crucial, because speech obviously contains much more than only text. With text, you only have words that in the connections, they say something, right? But when we talk, we have words, they mean something together, but we also have a sentiment that comes with it, right? We have tonation that comes with it. We don't have time to think how we are going to express something. So our feelings and everything comes across much, much better and much more naturally. Therefore, it's very important to leverage this metadata into customer dialogue systems. And then also the combination of the semantic and the machine learning is very important. So you need to be able to capture the person's mood. You need to be able to capture exactly what the customer wants, not only on a text level, on a very neutral level. You need to understand exactly who it is and what he or she wants in order to also personalize the output, right? So you don't want to have a voice banking machine and then you basically talk to it and you get wrong outputs, right? Or if we think about the agent support in the background, it wouldn't be good if the agent gets wrong information that he or she would mistakenly tell to the customer. And then with the metadata comes also more information, such as the conversational intent. So again, only having speech to text, it's great, it's amazing. It's already a beginning because you get structured data out of it, but to also recognize the intents, that you can basically leverage the speech and the voice and make everything, all the decisions based on the voice input. And then, of course, respect the data privacy, also something that Gartner noticed, that you should make sure that you will be and keep being the owner of your own data. Very important. If you look at or summarize some sort of the overall benefits of voice banking and what it actually can do, how powerful it can be, it's of course on the entire data side. So basically on the smart data knowledge, right? Right now, banks, they have thousands of calls and they don't know what they talk about with their customers, right? But if you have this data that you can leverage, it goes beyond than only the direct customer service based on the interaction. Actually, the bank will figure out which products have some problems, which are the products our customers call us mostly for, where do we lack in marketing communication, etc. So as you can see, once you capture this data, you get a much bigger picture, especially because we usually, when something is a little bit annoying, we are not going to write an email to the bank or tell them. However, if we are already talking to them and something is annoying, we might mention it in a side comment, right? This is usually completely lost. However, if you can capture that and analyze that, you can make your processes throughout the bank much better. And then, of course, the entire legal aspect should also be guaranteed. And what is better than guaranteeing that even more and at the same time in a cheaper way, right? So the fact that you basically have all your data, you know that you are serving your clients in a compliant way, right? So if you look at a trading department, for instance, sometimes there are keywords used that only some people know what it actually is meant by them, right? But if a system, a voice banking system in the background can listen to it and capture the information, it can alert the supervisor, for instance, if there's a mistake, or there's a mistake in the data or something said in the data that is not very compliant, then it can basically also make it indicated. And then on the employee side, of course, it's much more beneficial for an advisor to talk to a client being perceived as very competent. Of course, his happiness, his productivity, everything rises automatically. Also, if somebody has to answer all the time, all day long phone calls about sending a document or asking for account balance, if he or she doesn't have to do that anymore and spend the time on actually valuable discussions, I think it's quite obvious that this person is being much more motivated afterwards. And then also on the process side, as I said, it goes along with the data. So in improving this process, you have a much better interconnectivity among your internal processes. As I said, we are not only talking about the customer interaction level, we talk beyond that within the bank. And the better you connect these processes, the better, obviously, it's the service for the client, and also the cheaper your operation is going to get, obviously. And therefore, you make the operations cheaper, and obviously you are going to save money with that. And then at last, but most importantly, of course, the customer. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have a voice banking from a customer perspective, we are not talking about replacing humans, or we are not talking about a machine is becoming, or is better than a human, or is worse than a human. It's not about that. It's actually about supporting it. If I talk to banks and insurances, etc., and their heads of call centers, they're telling me that they have an increase in incoming calls. So you might think, okay, with the internet and everything, people do not call the bank anymore. But that's actually simply not true. It's the opposite. The call volume rises. And why? I personally think it's because the portals, the websites, they have become so complex that you will lose so much time looking for the information that you actually want to have, that it would be much faster just making a phone call. Today, even though if you're in waiting line, you put your phone on loudspeaker on the table, and then you just wait until somebody picks up. But then you get information straight away without losing any time. So if you can have this information just with the equal quality or even better from a machine 24 hours, I think it speaks for itself that it would be a benefit for the bank client as well. With that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope I was keeping the time, and I'm very happy now to switch over to the panel discussion together with Dominic and Shehom and Gabriel.
So Thanks, Stefan, for the presentations. As mentioned, we will switch now to the panel discussions. This is for me the opportunity to introduce our panelists. First webcam now is Jérôme Bailly. Jérôme Bailly, business developer for Adnovum. He's based in Lausanne. Thank you for joining us tonight and to contribute to this event. Second panelist is also Dominique Spadinger. Dominique Spadinger is working for Post Finance. He is involved in investment manager and also corporate venture, as I have read on your LinkedIn profile. So welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight and contributions. So now that we have our three panelists here, I would start with the first question. What's the difference first between a Voicebot, which has been presented, and a chatbot? Perhaps as you presented, Stefan, I will share this first question for you.
Thank you for the question, Gabriel. Quite an interesting one, and I think I heard it quite a few times already. What the difference is? On one hand, as it already says, right, voice and chat, so text. On one side, on the chatbot, you can basically type, right, and on the Voicebot, you can use your voice. From the functionality perspective, it's quite, or both can sort of do the same thing if both are equally intelligent. With the only like difference is on the technology aspect, as we I think learned now during my presentation, is that voice input is much more complex and much more complicated, and needs therefore an adjusted dialogue flow because it's much more natural and has to be attentive to quick changes. Whereas when we usually type, we have time to think and we text it very precisely on what the matter is.
Maybe I can add something to this. Of course, the question we got all the time from the client we are meeting at Adnovum, I would say Voicebot and chatbot are not to be opposed. They are working in the same strategy to give the best service to your client. So it's just two different channels. The voice is usually used in call center, and the chat is usually used in the website or the app. Then you just let your client choose which channel does he prefer. It's like the omni-channel automated communication. And what is interesting, I would say, I always recommend both projects if clients can, because the common ground is the same. Analyzing the question of your clients, the frequently asked question, and then work on the call flow. And this work, it serves for both channels. You can start either with chatbot and then go to Voicebot, or the other way around. So yeah, this works together to better serve your clients and help the communication.
And so, what's your view, Dominique, about this? If you just unmute.
I mean, there's not much to add on that. Actually, the difference between a voice and the chatbot is the input channel, and in the end, it's the conversation design that matters. It's a complete different conversation design that you apply using a chatbot or a Voicebot, and the training data is also different. So you probably can't reuse the training data that you had from your chatbot to actually feed it into your Voicebot. So that's a big difference there.
Okay, thanks. Let me share with you the next questions. As you're a Swiss German, looks like, at least, does a Voicebot can recognize Swiss German dialect?
I mean, that one is yours, Stefan, isn't it?
I wasn't sure who it is addressing to. Yeah, I mean, the answer is obviously yes, at least from our perspective, right? I think we all know. So if we think about like the gadgets, they do not. But if we talk about voice bots from an enterprise perspective, really business solutions, then yes, they do support Swiss German. Of course, we have there, let's call it like minor differences in dialects. Some are strong and some are a little bit weaker. That has to do with the data. But as I mentioned on my second last slide, that's why it's important to choose models that can be updated with your own customer data, because that makes sure that if there's differences in the quality of the dialect understanding, that you basically make that up with your additional data that you put in. But the short answer is yes, it does support Swiss German.
Yeah, I can only agree on that. We're having at Post Finance, we're having a Voicebot live in our telephony environment, and that one really does understand Swiss German, especially good in the more common dialects, and not as good in the rural area dialects, but it does understand Swiss German, so we can definitely assure that.
But not all Voicebot technology can recognize Swiss German. At Novum, we have made extended research on the available solution on the market, and we finally decided to go with speech, because especially of this competitive advantage of being able to understand German dialect, which represent 3/4 of the calls of our major clients. So yeah, that's important, but it's not easy, and it's a big challenge for Switzerland. But speech did it quite well.
So would you say it could be a key differentiator in a country like Switzerland?
Sure. For example, have you ever tried to use Siri or Amazon Alexa with some Swiss German dialect that I don't speak? But for example, I'm sure either you, Dominic, or Stefan can give a feedback. The customer experience using this American products are pretty bad. So the Swissness here it's important.
I think that's true. I mean, people feel more comfortable if they can talk their mother tongue, and if it's Swiss German, they feel more comfortable doing that. But what we recognized as well within our time we went live with our Voicebot is that we're talking in High German to the customer. And the customer, we're expecting the customer to answer in Swiss German. So what sometimes happens is that they might start in Swiss German, but then when they are involved in a dialogue, they switch back to German because they probably think the robot does not understand them. So that's what we experienced a bit. I think there's a phase that needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, I think that's because we are not used to it, right? I mean, many people, they are not, I mean, what we are used to is, okay, if we talk to a machine, we have to talk High German, because as Stefan said, because we are used to from Alexa and this kind of things, right? So we think that you need to have, or you need to speak High German. And I think that's a very important attribute, actually, when we talk about a natural dialogue flow based or together with a machine, right? It's actually, you need to be, or the user should be able to speak his or her own language, because otherwise it's not very comfortable. Many Swiss people do not really feel comfortable speaking High German, and if they speak High German, it still sounds sort of Swissy High German. So then an only pure High German robot that only understands High German will probably also have difficulties understanding Swiss High German, because even though it's High German, it's a dialect, right? So if then you don't have this covered, then you would already encounter difficulties there. But yes, I agree with Dominic's tendency. I think there are both ways. People starting a High German, switching to Swiss German because they want to basically figure out, do I really have to speak High German? Or we have also the other way around, starting Swiss German and just by, I don't know, by what, but sometimes when we talk to a German person, we start Swiss German and then we suddenly speak High German to this person without noticing that, oh, we actually switched, right? So this sometimes also happens. But I think we cannot really say which is the exact tendency, but if I now think about, generally speaking, about overall projects in different areas, I would definitely agree that the majority, without knowing, speaks Swiss German to the bot.
Dominic, you mentioned before something which sounds interesting to me about being comfortable also. What is your view about acceptability across different generations and ages? That it is more easy or more open with younger compared to older? What's your view?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we deployed our Voicebot in our telephone environment in June last year, and we already gained a little bit of experience there in terms of acceptability. And one I can say is it's a bit the same, like the same experience as we had with launching the chatbot in 2017. So at the beginning in 2017, when we were launching the text-based chatbot, the acceptance was not quite that high, so people didn't really know how to chat to the roboter, and were not as satisfied. And we experienced a little bit the same here with our Voicebot. Some think it's really good, but we also get quite a few negative feedbacks on it. But it's definitely changing already. So at the very beginning, when we started, we weren't as good as we're now, so it progresses, and I think that's the important thing. And in terms of age, that's also very interesting. I don't have the numbers at the moment, but in a telephony environment, you rather do not have the digital natives. Rather not. So for us, it's like that. The customers that call us are rather not the digital natives. So you need to design a dialogue that is really, really good to actually trigger that fascination about that bot. So the customers are rather that kind of non-digital native. That's our assumption so far.
Do you see, Dominic, a tendency? I mean, as we discussed before, right, this Voicebot topic is quite new still. Not many companies have it in place. So many people have probably never touched one, so they never came across one. Can you already see a tendency there, or is it too short period of time that you are live now that you can see a tendency that at the beginning was only sort of this kind of group, but it's now slightly shifting, or is it still like as it was at the beginning?
No, it's shifting very quick. To be honest, at the beginning we had quite some troubles, and a lot of customers that actually call us. I think it's 3% of our 3% of our customers actually demand 40% of our volume in the contact center. So it's a very few people that call there, and you can train them as well, so they get used to that. So yeah, we already noticed a shift in the acceptance of the system, and it's totally normal that a system like that needs some adaptation to the customers. It's weird for people who never talk to a voice assistant to actually talk with a robot. Definitely.
So talking about acceptance, one question which comes frequently also in the Q&A function is about disclosing to the person who is interacting that he's interacting with a machine. Would you think that it would have to be disclosed as now we are disclosing what we are doing with your data or video recordings? Perhaps Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, right, we say, yes, you should disclose it, and you should not even try to not disclose it or try to sort of fake it and try to hide that it's a robot, because the understanding and the acceptance of the users is much, much bigger if they know that they are going to talk to a robot, right? And then it's also not so bad. However, if you try to hide the fact that it's a robot, I mean, at some point, depending on how long the conversation is, at some point the user will probably figure it out, right? And then he or she would be quite angry knowing that he or she just got fooled, right? So therefore, yes, we think for the experience, you should purposefully disclose it, make sure that it comes across that it's a robot. And I mean, as long as what I said before, as long as the quality can just be kept like with a human being, nobody has a problem talking to a robot, right? As long as it comes naturally across, and therefore, yes, it should be disclosed.
And I can add that it's definitely a best practice that we recommend at ad novum, like being welcomed first by the Voicebot. The Voicebot has to introduce his or herself. We also give names, surnames to Voicebot, and we let the choice to the caller to ask directly the question to the Voicebot, or to wait being in line to be transferred to an operator. So full transparency, especially these days. Voicebots are quite new, still quite new, especially in Switzerland. People are not always used to interact with Voicebot, so we have to do everything we can to make them comfortable for this first experience. And once they see that it's working, once they see that they are getting added value, then now they are used to it, and then they will for most of the call then go directly to the Voicebot.
Yeah, you have to build some sort of trust, right? That the customer knows that he or she will be just served with an equal quality. Of course, then you have also the people trying to fool the bot, and that's also completely fine. I mean, as long as you fulfill the purpose, and then if somebody accidentally tries to fool it, of course you will always find a way to trick technology, right? There's always this way, but as long as it serves the purpose, I think that's completely okay. But maybe Dominic, an insight from you. Do you guys announce it? Do you make it transparent?
Yeah, we even go a step further. We don't even give it a name. We want to make it really super clear that it is a robot, or like that it is a bot that you're talking to. So there is, of course, the option to give it a name, to give it a personality, which is nice. And if you can actually have a conversation with it, which is a natural conversation, it's good that you give it a name. But it can confuse people when it has a name, and we want to avoid that. And we decided for us at Post Finance that our assistant does not have a name, so we call it digital assistant, and it introduces itself like that. So there's a clear point on that there's a robot talking to you.
Interesting. We have a question from Zakia, which is asking about limitation. Which limitation did you face until now with Voicebot? Things you cannot do at the moment. Perhaps you could expect to be able to do that in the future. Which, as Stefan, you were focused on developing. Where were the limitations you had to face?
That's actually a very, very good question. I mean, think about the spectrum, what you could do with a Voicebot, you probably can think quite broad, right? But nevertheless, we always say start with a very small step, right? Start with one use case, such as, for instance, the account balance or ordering a document as Post Finance did now, and then build upon that, and then integrate more and more and more, right? Because obviously, the more information you're seeking, also the more information you have to get somewhere in the back end, right? And therefore, it becomes complexer because then you need to get the information out. And of course, as soon as you need to you start to try to negotiate somehow, right? As the example that I made, when you have a mismatch on your invoice, for instance, right? That's what you want to talk to a human being, because you want to sort of better understand it, right? So there, I think we have to be honest and say, okay, this can never be done by a bot, like fully. That doesn't make sense, right? But we are concentrating, or we are saying, at least at the moment, the technology is at a stage that you can have a natural conversation with a clear output that can be looked up somewhere. That is sort of a fact, right? Even if it's only for the moment, in that very moment, as an account balance, is a fact that the very moment you are asking, maybe in 2 hours it's different, but at least that can basically be picked up by this very moment and then give it back. I think that's probably where the technology is right now, but it's all for as long as the communication, this dialogue is built very naturally, I think it's also okay to have it only on that level. And as soon as it gets more complex, you should involve the human being.
It's just really hard in banking to actually get super good at it, because we're not able to actually share our user data or our conversations with other banks to actually train the system. So each bank needs to train their system for themselves, which is totally manageable. But we could be a lot faster if we could share this data. But that's, of course, not possible in our area because of data protection for our customers, which is good as well. But it sets some limitations to the technology as well, especially in our area. So if we find a solution there to share training data without sharing customer data, that would be really nice.
Do you have, in your experience, seen a typical customer profile who likes or which is more open to use Voicebot?
No, not really. I don't have numbers and experiences in this area. I can just say that we're actually, what we do is, that's a bit mean, we're actually forcing customers that are not digital native to actually talk to bots. Because we're implementing it in our telephony environment, and telephony environment are rather not the digital natives. That's how we feel it. It's been interesting.
If I may, here actually the Hochschule Luzern, they just did, I think last spring, they published a very interesting study around this topic on fintech, on like a digitalization in banking in the customer interaction field, not only call center but on applications, e-banking, etc., etc. And the study showed quite clearly that they are the different groups. So really the very digital guys, so the completely non-digital guys, and something in between. And it really doesn't really matter on the occupation or on the age, at least in this study. It was really shown, okay, they are in this group, and in all the three group has all types of people, basically, on age, interest, etc. So that's why I think it really depends a little bit on that, what Dominic said, where how much you're attracted by such technology, and actually also willing to do it, right? Because sometimes we have the tendency, especially in Switzerland, we are quite controversial to everything that is new, and the first reactions, oh no, I don't want to do it until I try it, and if it works, then oh, that's great, and then I started using it, right? And I think that's this approach that we have in Switzerland a little bit. That's my personal view why we left behind. I mean, these voice bots in Germany or in the US, that's been already online for years. But here in Switzerland, because we have this tendency to be very like a step back and then, oh, what is that? Something new? Why should I use it? Until I test it and it works, then it's fine. And
I can add something on the digital natives of why do they like specifically the Voicebot tourism? Because first of all, they are the voice generation. You see them walking in the street, not typing but sending voice message. That is getting more and more popular. Voice is 3 times faster than typing, and we've seen also some younger generation be more confident talking to a bot. That could surprise some of our listeners today. But yeah, some young people felt that their question they want to ask might be quite simple, or yeah, they feel more comfortable speaking with a bot than with a human. Then I let up to you to know if it's good or bad, but that's something that we have noticed. Some generation, the younger generation, is more at ease talking with bot than with a human.
One question we have from Jérôme Beauvais talking about cybersecurity. How currently do you identify the customer before performing operations on the accounts? And I think on the same topic, can we hack the Voicebot?
Well, I can maybe start here. As we have a Voicebot Live, we're actually authenticating our customers that are using the Voicebot via a voice print. So they need to register before that, give their voice print, and we're using that one to actually authenticate the customer. And in terms of hacking, that's of course a tricky question. It's a very, very, very secure authentication method. The only problem here is it's not a standard authentication method in banking. So as long as it's not standard, its distribution is hard. I wouldn't say a one-time password is safer than a voice print authentication, not at all. However, it's hard to get that through in our domain in banking to actually make it a fully fledged authentication method. It will get there, but it needs time, as our sector is very, very cautious on those technologies. And it's also good that they are. It's customer data. It's really sensitive customer data, but it takes longer to get accepted, to accept this technology.
Yeah, this method of recognition that has been chosen by PostFinance is the most advanced, the voice profile recognition. The other solution is to let the bot ask question as an operator would do, but the bot asks the traditional question about the name, date of birth for a bank, the last movement on last transaction. And that's when, of course, we connect the Voicebot to the IT system of the bank. So that's when it's getting fun, because then the Voicebot is now completely connected to the full IT service of the clients. And there are these two ways: voice recognition via voice profile, and asking question by the bot.
Totally agree, Jerome. Totally agree. However, it takes out all the magic of voice authentication, because you're actually copying a stupid process that we had before and use the new technology to make the same process. But actually, we can just start handling the customer, get his intents, and while we're having the conversation, we can authenticate him. So the customer experience is a lot better there.
Yeah.
But I totally understand if this is not, if voice prints are not recognized as secure enough, we need to add that element as well, which comes to the cost of customer experience.
And yeah, these two might be implemented at the same time. If you let the choice of your clients to accept or not to have their voice print, if they do not accept, then the other way, the B plan, the less advanced, I totally agree with you. The voice recognition via voice profile is the best, but then you can still use the bot to recognize. And the last one will be to involve an operator.
Thank you. I think we are. Oh yes, please.
Maybe just one word on now on breaching the technology on voice biometrics. I mean, we are talking here about 500 to 1,000 characteristics that is hidden in your voice, right? That we as human beings, we cannot differentiate, and we don't hear them, right? But the machine basically can. So it's really quite an extensive mathematical hash value that generates this voice print, right? And if you take it out from the system, so if somebody would steal the voice print, this voice print, nothing can be done. You cannot reverse it back into audio. You cannot listen what is actually being said. You cannot use it with another technology. This is completely gone. So this is really, this print is only stored for this particular purpose at this particular infrastructure and cannot be transferred anywhere else. So it's really, as Dominic said, I think at the moment, in terms of like in these interaction channels, I think it's the most secure way of authenticating the customer.
So one last question before to switch to the networking part. There is a question from Virginia Jimenez. have you done or have you read some studies about the language or voice preferences? Would you prefer a male or female voice, or does it depend from the age of the person? Does it depend in which industry you are acting? It's for private needs, corporate needs, and moreover, that you have to apply different approach depending which country you are providing the solutions. Perhaps start with Stefan.
Very, very good question indeed, and I think you already gave the answer. It's a cultural thing, right? It really depends on the culture, what is seen, like whether you put a female or a male voice. It also depends on the industry. So if you want to have a more welcoming voice, right, usually you rather, at least now in our culture, usually have a female voice. Whereas, for instance, I don't know if it's going to be a sports club, now out of banking, but if it's, for example, something like that, then you probably will have a man's voice. So I think it really depends on the application area in the vertical. So which kind of vertical are you operating? Is it bank, insurance? Is it, we heard, traveling industry, for instance, right? And I think that's something that you really have to consider. But maybe Dominic, they had to decide on that when they implemented it. What was your deciding criteria?
Yeah, to be honest, we had other issues for our first pilot. So we went live last year in June with a first Voicebot version, and we were struggling rather with technical issues than with how the voice actually sounds. But it is a second step that we want to do. And it is important. I totally agree that it is important, and that the voice also should reflect the company itself. The voice branding will get a huge thing if that kind of interface will get a standard. So how do companies or banks represent themselves on a pure voice user interface where there's no logos, where there's no corporate identity, corporate design? So this is really crucial. But we're very at the beginning there, and we just started now, and our current voice is not the voice that we developed for us. It's just a prototype.
So basically, SBB would recommend to use their train station voice to have Voicebot implemented.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's possible, right? You can have you can implement any voice that you want to have.
Yeah, and
okay,
that technology. Sorry.
Oh, so. Dominic, you can finish, and then we'll switch to Jérôme.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, that technology advances so fast. I mean, those text-to-speech engines, they become really good. At the beginning, they were quite simple, where they took pieces of words and put them together to actually make the sentences. We already see the text-to-speech systems that are based on a neural network, which generates the sentences in a very natural way. So the opportunities there are immense, and the possibilities to adjust the languages are great. So one can go for it. Jérôme, sorry.
Yeah, my
Final word from Jérôme.
answer would be close to what you say, Dominic. What we advise at Novum is to make it simple, especially to start with a pilot. Don't focus too much on details. Try to have the basics working. Try to have it live as soon as possible, and then test and learn. And after, on the second phase, you can fine tune, add more functionalities like this one, like the voice. But first, start with the basics. It's not a complicated project, but it's just a new project. A Voicebot in banking is new, so that's why we advise to start with this approach, pilot approach, few months, and then expand the scope if it's successful.
Thank you, Jérôme. So was the final word successful? It's the most important word, I would say. I'm sure it's not spontaneous, but okay. No, now time to switch to the networking part. First of all, I would like to warmly thank all our contributors tonight, especially Stefan Fellman with the keynote, and also our two additional panelists, Jérôme Bailly from Adnevum and Dominique Spalinger from PostFinance. Now we are switching to the networking part, so it means you can sit back to your table. It means you can also change or jump from table to table. To jump to another table, just double-click an available seat at another table. And last but not least, we have organized dedicated table so that you can meet easily our speakers. So there is dedicated table for Jérôme Bailly from Adnevum, also for Stefan Fellman from Speech. So just under the banner, you have the table, which is written meet, Speech or Adnevum, and there is also table meet Dominique Spalinger. So thank you to all participants. I hope you will also enjoy the networking part, and we are very interesting also to get your feedback so that we can improve our next event. So see you later. Bye. Back to the floor now.
Thank you.
Thank you.